the best way to convince an atheist that Christianity is the truth is by sitting down with them and not debating.
Okay, but no promises. I mean, I'm not just going to accept what you say to be true, because otherwise you could just say God exists, and I'll be like, oh, I can't even look it up. But, I'm going to look up what you say, make sure what you're saying is accurate, and if it's not, then, I don't need to debate you, you're just wrong.
But simply asking them if you could share what your point of view is about the origin of life and about the afterlife and heaven. And if they say yes, most of the time they'll say no, but if they say yes...
That's not a yes-no question, Matt.
If you could share what your point of view is about the origin of life and about the afterlife and heaven.
Well, you see, my point of view on the origin of life is yes. And my point of view on heaven is no. I mean, I think I know what he means, as in, are they willing to share their opinion, rather than is their opinion yes or no? Which, yes, I'm willing to share. I mean, the 3 points he mentioned was the origin of life, afterlife, and heaven? So, as for the origin of life, which is undeniable because we have life on Earth, and we know there was a point on Earth where there was no life, so there must have been a point in which life originated from, whether it be God or abiogenesis or another option. I'm more keen on the idea of abiogenesis rather than, mud and stuff making a man. We don't actually know the full-length story of how life started. Many people have got a good attempt, but until that's completed, we don't know for sure that life originated by God or abiogenesis. We don't know that life started on Earth at all. It's possible that when I was younger I had this idea that a life-starting world was different to a habitable world. Maybe Venus is a life-starting world and an asteroid hits it and panspermia allows that asteroid to hit the Earth and the organisms survive, hit the ocean and then start the process of evolution. We don't know. I don't believe that, by the way, but that was an idea I had when I was 15. I liked it. I thought I'd work with it because I hadn't seen anyone talk about it. It was fun. But the point is, we just don't know. With processes that were natural, I forget I have to add that because we're talking to Matt, no supernatural things required. But basically, we just don't know the answer. And eventually, Matt's going to have to stop using God of the Gaps arguments to fill in this one. As for an afterlife, I don't think there is any evidence out there suggesting an afterlife, unless you want to, use stuff that some people have said and then exclude anything else that other people have made as obvious skeptical remarks. For example, where people lift up out of the bed during surgery and they can see everything that happens around them, apart from, the specific test where there's numbers on top of a shelf that they couldn't see unless they were up there. They've never been able to actually prove that they can do this. It seems to be more of a hallucination type thing. But just as an example, I was using that. I do think that an afterlife, to some degree, an afterlife, is possible with the concept of NDEs, near-death experiences. So when people are approaching the end, there's sometimes a sudden spike in brain activity, and people who have those and who have been revived talk more. People who have had that more commonly talk about NDEs, which means that spike in brain activity is causing these experiences to happen, and also that time doesn't seem to relate. This spike in brain activity lasts mere moments, maybe not moments, 90 seconds, but moments as in instances of time. It doesn't last long. And the time experienced in these experiences are much greater. So, we know time is relative, but even the brain can elude you into thinking lots of time has gone by when not much actually has. Maybe an NDE could last forever. But I think NDEs can explain where afterlives come from. Or at least some of the afterlives that have been explained. Some people are just saying it, maybe, because it's comforting. He also mentioned heaven, which is the third option that he wanted to say, which is still an afterlife. So I don't know why it's separate to afterlife, but he mentioned it, so I'm going to talk about it anyway. And I'm going to treat them as separate things, because heaven is different. It's still an afterlife, but it's just a very specific one. And I find that the only reason people believe in heaven is it's a coping mechanism. It doesn't really matter if it's actually true, but it just feels better to believe in it. I don't. I wish I did, I wish I could, but I don't. It would be nicer to meet people afterwards. And I don't mean heaven is in like this perfect paradise. That sounds like insanity to me. Experiencing that for all of eternity. But, you know, it would be nice to see past ones again, but I don't think it's going to happen. If it did, I'd still treat it as a hallucination, which would, I guess, still be nice. An NDE that's like that. Why not? Anyway, that was me sharing. Thank you for listening. I would ask Matt, but I think we already know his answers. Yes, and God did it. Yes, and God did it. And yes, and God did it.
You need to caringly and calmly tell them what the facts are and what the truth is. And a lot of times people will not care about how much you know until they know how much you care. Very important. So put a smile on your face.
Ironically, he says that without a smile on his face. It's easy, Matt. I mean, I don't smile a lot, but he's giving his instructions that he should be smiling, and he's not even doing it himself. In this regard specifically, I don't think it matters how much you actually care about the conversation or care about the person knowing, because it doesn't matter how much I care that Matt doesn't believe in a God. That's not going to happen. He's not going to change his mind. No matter what evidence if I could present 100% coherent, complete and undeniable evidence to him, I can't. But if I could, then Matt still would believe in the God. There's no changing his mind on this. I'm going to be covering 2 videos on this, and I'm sure in this video or the next video that he's going to say something that is completely contradictory, and we can say it, show it, and he'll defend it, even though it won't make sense. And I can explain it till I'm blue in the face, and it's not going to change his mind. I assure you of that if it happens. Now, from the other perspective, I could be convinced of a God, depending on the definition. I don't think there is a coherent definition of a God. Not one that's universally accepted. The only thing I think that works as a definition for God is that someone is convinced that there is a God, and that thing is God, whatever it is. It's about the best I've got for an actual answer that encapsulates all gods. Because you could say triomni, but many gods throughout history have not been triomni, but are still considered gods, and the definition of God needs to apply to them too, because, well, they're ancient gods. Even if they're not real, they're still ancient gods. But if you gave a definition of a god, and then was able to prove it, then I would believe in that god. For example, I was in a comment section on my video, and someone said the universe itself is God. Now I am convinced their God exists. I don't think it's a god, but by their definition it is. So I believe their God. My next question is it worthy of worship? The universe itself, I don't think so. It's worthy of admiration. It's beautiful. It's absolutely dangerous. But you get my point. Like, it's not something that's going to appreciate your worship, and I don't think it's actually done anything consciously. However, Matt, on the other hand, has a conscious being that would appreciate worship if it exists. So Matt's just going to have a hard time proving that his God exists rather than actually proving that it's worthy of worship. Though even if he did, I would find it very difficult to worship the God of the Bible, especially if it was the one that Matt worships, as he's a fundamentalist. Everything in the Bible is literally true. Yeah, I don't want to worship that God. I don't think it's worthy of it. It's evil. So he's warmed us up. We've sat next to each other, looking at each other in the eyes, smiling, converting. I don't know, where are we going from here, Matt?
And I would start out by mentioning the fact that atheism is truly based in mysticism.
That took a very strange turn. I believe in a magic being. I mean, supernatural, sorry. I believe in a supernatural being that said words and the universe appeared suddenly. But atheism is magic. It's all mysticism. I never understand this argument. We have ways to potentially explain it. So we have at least the idea that our thoughts, our theories, our ideas are potentially possible. But no, you think that's magic and go, magic is the option. We can't believe in magic. We must believe in magic. I mean, don't get me wrong. Matt technically hasn't said that his argument is not mysticism. He's just trying to, at the very least, equate the two from my perspective right now, because his is magic, and he's trying to say that my view is magic too. So it's kind of trying to bring it up to the same crazy level as his argument. Kind of like what they do with evolution. So they go, we've got a religion and you've got your science, which is on a higher pedestal. So instead of actually trying to prove ourselves to make ours a science that's provable and testable, no, we can't do that. So what we're going to do is say evolution is a religion and tear it down so that it's as crazy as our view. That's kind of how I see the fundamental creationist side of the arguments. I just find it strange that he's looking at us and we say there's no supernatural being, there's no magical incantation, and he goes, that's magic. So what is actually mystic about atheism? I suppose it's the idea of something that you don't understand appears like magic. So he looks at our arguments and our science and he goes, I don't get it, so it must be magic.
Think about it. If the world created itself, that is by definition a magic act.
The world didn't create itself. It didn't just like go, that's my bit of rocks and that's my bit of rocks. Thank you. It formed. Okay, it didn't have a conscious mind to decide to create itself. It didn't go, this is what we're doing today. It formed because of, gravity. Like a magnet. If you've got a magnet and you put a magnet near it, it goes boom, like that. And then you've got two magnets that form a bigger object. And if you get loads of little magnets, you get a bigger object, and so on and so forth. And I know that I'm pushing the magnets to each other, but these things were floating around in space. And I know it's gravity and not magnetism, but I don't know if you understand these things, so I'm trying to explain it really well, but on a really basic level. So, these rocks floating around in space, and two come close to each other, they start spinning around, hit each other, or, maybe they spin around and fly off, and then two other rocks hit each other. But eventually these rocks are going to coalesce into an object, and that object is usually orbiting a star, which is called an accretion disk at that point, because you've got the it looks beautiful, to be fair. You've got these bright colours, usually orange, which is my favourite colour. And these objects just start to form and take up the local area that it has and clears it out of all the rubble. And just because of gravity, and it pulls it all together. And you can see it happening on things like Saturn's moons. You can see the gaps in the rings. If you look there for long enough, you'll see a moon. They're called shepherd moons because they, clear up the rubble in the areas, and any of the debris from one of the rings starts to leave the ring. The shepherd moon's gravity either slows it down to bring it back in, and it stays in the ring because of these moons. If it's falling behind the moon and it's coming out that way, it's going to speed it up to catch up with the ring. It's why they're called shepherd moons. But you can see it happening on Saturn with the moons. Just imagine that around a star instead, and then you've got the Earth forming. I hope that helps. But it's all natural. Notice how I didn't say God grabbed these rocks and squeezed them. It was just gravity. Unless gravity's God. I mean, they start with the same letter. It's close enough. And again, it seems like magic. But just like when a magician fools you with a trick, like maybe it's a card trick, and he fools you with it, and then you go, how did you do it? And he explains it. You can't then say it's still magic. It was just an illusion. Okay, the magician told you how it was done, and you go, it's still magic. I mean, depending on the definition, yes, but it's not the magic that you're saying right now. It's an illusion. Matt, I'm getting a bit upset now. I mean, we were lovingly looking into each other's eyes, sat down smiling at each other on a bench or something, or a pew, why not? And now you're making baseless accusations about my beliefs because you don't understand stuff.
It is not scientific in any way to assert that matter and energy could create itself, that it could pop into existence on its own. An outside force had to create time, space, and matter.
Oh, I see. You confused me for a little because you said world, but I see you mean the universe now. I've never understood this argument. It doesn't mean it's magic. I mean, I could say so, but I wouldn't learn. But here's how I see it, and correct me where I'm wrong. Your God doesn't exist. Yes, he does. He just exists outside of space, time, and matter. Yeah. That's just a long-winded way of saying what I just said. Right, now if I just accept it and force the idea into my head, space, time, and matter are all going to be a problem here. If no time elapses, like, a progress bar on the bottom of the video, if no time elapses, try it. Pause the video. That's a good idea. Pause the video right now and see what it's like when no time elapses. Just remember to play it again. Oh no, I've lost a few people. Anyway, once you pause the video, nothing will change on the screen unless you do something like delete the tab or something. But you get my point. It freezes because no change can happen when time stops. If God is timeless, he cannot change. No wonder he's unchanging. Anyway, so he's a single frame of the universe. I've tickled myself now. Without time, change cannot occur. So God couldn't have gone from a universe existing or a universe not existing without space and time and matter to a universe with space, time and matter. You cannot have zero time elapse and then change it from time being switched on. It doesn't work. It's impossible. It makes no sense. It's illogical. It cannot happen. You cannot go, oh, I've got an idea. I'm going to turn on time now and just start the play button on the universe, because you can't turn it on because there's no time. You can't make the change. Change requires time. So we can't change time's non-existent status to existing because there's no time to change. As for the spatial issue, come with me. Let's go here. This is Blender. And as you can see, we have a three-dimensional cube. So on this cube, we can pick it up, we can move it around, and this is moving in 3D space. Yeah. We've got a camera here. I'll delete that. We don't need that. And we've got a light source. I'm just going to get that out the way. But these are 3D objects I just moved out of the way. We've got 3D space. I can push it down. Wait, so G on the Z-axis goes up and down. On the... No, not the delete axis. That's not an axis. G, X moves it on the X-axis. And if I change it to Y-axis, it will move from its original spot on the Y-axis. I feel like I'm doing a Blender tutorial now. I'm not trying to. It's a free program, though. It's your choice. But you can see it goes on infinitely. Or at least, I think it's infinite. I've never tried it, but I have gone really far in it, and I've never reached an end. But that makes it more realistic to our universe. We don't know if it's infinite or not. So, I think Blender's a great analogy. But as you can see, we've got 3D space. Now, no matter where I move this cube in 3D space, it'll never fit. Well, not fit. It will never reach my hand. I could 3D print it, I know, and then put it on my hand. But that's making a new cube. I couldn't put that cube on the screen right there into my hand because I'm outside of its 3D space-time. And yes, there is a time bar just here. I can't remember how keyframes work off the top of my head. But yeah, I could place this here, bring up N, and if I press I on the X-axis, yes, there we go. I do remember how to do keyframing. Right, now if I press that and do that, screw it, I was meant to do Y-axis, but there you go. I'll move my camera instead. And then press on here, on the Y-axis. Yeah, there you go. And now if I scroll through here, we now have a time. What you doing? Have I just deleted it? No. Yes, no, there you go. See, now we have time. Do you want to see what happens when it's timeless? If we go back, yeah. If I can. If we go back, okay, you see it's moving? And now we'll turn off time. That cube is now timeless. Notice how it cannot change. So this is a way we can sort of visualize the idea of God, in this case me, which I don't like, but you know, screw it, just as an example, analogy. I am God of Blender, and I'm in the God universe, because I have to have my own space-time to be able to have time to interact and stop or start the time on this universe. So if God has its own universe, then it can have time. And only if it has time can God then start and stop time in our universe, like I did here. So I can go backwards, I could press start, and now we have a working model of the idea of God starting and stopping time. The problem is, that means God has his own universe. If God has its own universe, God is dependent on that universe, otherwise it cannot change or do anything, even exist. You can even take this further and say it's logically possible that the universe can exist without God. The God universe, I mean, not our universe. Screw that. The God universe can exist without God. But God could not exist without its universe. If that's the case, which it has to be if we exist in our universe which had time and didn't have time before, the only explanation, as Matt said, is God, and the only way that's logically possible is if God has its own universe, then the universe precedes God. God is dependent on that universe. That means universes are required before beings. So why do we need God and its universe when we already have us and our universe? If God's universe could have formed naturally or spontaneously emerged, why does our universe have to be any different? Thank you for listening to my surprise TED Talk on moving objects in Blender.
Either one of two things happened. Either God created this world, or everything created itself from magic. Either time, space, and nature poofed into existence from a mystical act of randomness, or it was designed. Intelligent design is true.
So, Matt just says one of two things, and then gave us 4 examples. In fact, I'll use them to explain his false dichotomy here. I'll use the 4 examples he gave in his false dichotomy.
Either God created this world.
Okay, so option 1, God did it. Surprise, surprise.
Or everything created itself from magic.
Right, so panpsychism plus pan-wizardry. Panpsychism is the idea that all matter is conscious. Everything in the universe is conscious entities. They just don't have the ability to communicate with us because they don't have ears, eyes, nose, mouth and stuff. So they can't tell us they're conscious. They just are. And they might not even know they're conscious. It's just that consciousness exists within everything. That's what that kind of means. And pan-wizardry is that because that wasn't crazy enough, we're going to make them magical beings as well. And, have psychic, magical abilities.
Either time, space, and nature poofed into existence from a mystical act of randomness.
See, here it gets funny, because from an atheist perspective, that just sounds like God did it again. And then, I suppose that would mean that it's not an option. But I'm pretty sure the intent from Matt here is that this is the atheist position. This would be how creationists strawman the atheist point of view. And the ironic thing is, it's neither. You see, you got to remember, he said a supernatural event that spontaneously poofed the universe into existence. No God, no nothing, no naturalism, just poof. So option 3, poof. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Magical poof. So what's option 4?
Or it was designed. Intelligent design is true.
Okay, so remember, this is the one that Matt likes. This is Matt's point of view. We had option 1, God did it. That's not Matt's view. Option 2 of panpsychism plus pan-wizardry. No, that's not Matt's view either. And spontaneous poofing. Spontaneous poofing is also not Matt's thing. It's not my thing either. None of these are mine. Option 4 isn't mine either. I just hit my mic. Option 4 isn't mine either. But that's Matt's. He likes the intelligent design. So his point of view is simulation theory. Intelligent beings created a simulation that has our universe within. Whether that be some sort of holographic universe or some other, computer-based simulation. It could be other forms of simulation. But ultimately, a simulated universe that was created by an advanced race of beings that are beyond our conception. That's what Matt just said his point of view was. Or ancient aliens. I mean, they could have created the universe, a real, tangible universe that, they exist in a bubble universe of their own, and they have explored all these bubble universes and have found a way to create universes. They might have actually created a universe. That's intelligent design. They're not gods. So I'm surprised that Matt likes this one. But at least Matt did list the God one in there. He didn't even list mine. Which would be that some natural process caused the Big Bang to happen. And the Big Bang is just expansion, so I'm using that wrong myself. Caused the universe to exist is a possibility. I like the idea. I just like it. I don't agree with it, but I like the idea because it opens minds. Do you remember Family Guy, where Stewie Griffin went back in time with a time machine, and his time machine blew up and caused the Big Bang? I think that's quite a funny topic, the idea that future event could cause a past event. Because we know that twisted space-time around supermassive black holes that rotate really fast, we have the possibility there that it warps in on itself and creates potential backwards time travel. Forwards time travel is really easy, if you have the technology, that is. But, we do it all the time. We always progress forward in time, but we can control it and speed that up. We've shifted atomic clocks based on this. We've desynced them. We know that it's in effect. We know that it's true. Time dilation is a thing. But we could warp it to the extent that backwards time travel might be possible, but only around vastly rapid spinning black holes. Like, it's the only place where space-time is distorted so much. Until we find a way to make wormholes or something. But that requires exotic matter with negative mass. We don't know if that's possible. But what I find most interesting about this is that we don't know. This is an open topic for debate if the universe had a cause at all, and what that cause was. It's an open debate, but Matt knows the answer somehow. I'd love for Matt to actually try and, prove his case, rather than try and dismantle all the others. He presents a false dichotomy, gives us 4 options, tries to take down one of them and says, now you have your answer. And didn't even list my option in there. I mean, I guess I'm a naturalist, so my answer would be natural processes cause the universe to come into existence. We don't know it. But as I said, even if it was something supernatural to us now, if we find it to be true, then it's not supernatural anymore, so it was a natural process. So either way, it's kind of naturalist, I guess. It's not to be confused with naturist. That's kind of a different thing. It's like I said with the vampire earlier. If a vampire was real, it's not supernatural anymore. It's just natural. And we have a whole new field of study to do. But based on the same logic, if Matt says his god is supernatural, by definition, he's saying his god does not exist. It's a common thing for Matt to do. He doesn't exist within space and time. God has no properties, but yet still somehow exists in some form or another. He doesn't exist on the XYZ axis. He doesn't exist anywhere in time because he's timeless, and he doesn't have anything that forms a tangible structure or even an intangible thing apart from in the concepts of people's minds. It's almost like it doesn't exist. And then he calls it supernatural, which by definition doesn't exist. Because if it does exist, it then becomes a part of nature that we can study.
And even if we granted that the Big Bang happened...
What do you mean if? The Big Bang is a fact. There's no questioning whether the Big Bang event itself happened. It did. I don't like the idea of that either. I tried to disprove it. As a confident teenager, I thought I could do that. But no, I couldn't disprove it, obviously. But I just didn't like it. But that still didn't stop me from accepting that it happened. There's too much evidence to show that it actually happened. The theory doesn't just go, the Big Bang is just a theory. The Big Bang theory is how it expanded, or the processes involved, or anything along those lines. So the Big Bang event happened is fact. How the Big Bang happened is theory. Same with gravity. Gravity is a fact. How gravity works, functions, how it is, how it exists, what it interacts with, all those things are the theory. Same with evolution. Just to wind up, Matt, evolution is also fact. How it happens is the theory. There's no denying the fact of evolution. But you could change the theory of evolution. With all 3 of those, it would be science denial to say that they didn't happen. Now, if you want to say or challenge how it happened, that's fine. That's generally science progression, as long as you have value to add to what you're saying. Even if you're completely wrong, then we've now looked at a topic that's wrong and gone, okay, it doesn't work. But this is called learning. Anyway, I'll let him continue with the science denial for now, but I had to mention that it was denying science. Literal facts being denied.
It would still require supernatural power to be able to convert nothing into something.
Okay, again, so Matt doesn't understand the Big Bang Theory. That's fine. However, Matt has been told that he doesn't understand it and has been explained to him in depth multiple times over years now. This is not just science denial. This is refusing to listen, sticking your fingers in your ears and not listening to anyone's answers, waiting the next day and repeating the same shit. This is just demonstrating Matt's refusal to learn. Literally. Though, I also don't like it when atheists say that nobody says nothing into something, because I don't like it either. People do. I've seen it in documentaries. It's just not the scientists who use that term of talking anymore. They may used to have in explaining extreme concepts to, and without being rude, extreme lay people, like myself as a youngster, if you like. Nothing has many meanings. It's a complex topic. I mean, in my hand there is nothing right now. But is there really? I mean, there's air. Definitely there's air in this vicinity. I feel like a wizard now. Maybe I am magic. But there's nothing in my hand. There's loads of things in my hands. There's microscopic organisms, I'm sure, are somewhere on my hand. You can see the lights on over there, a light behind me as well. There's two sets of streams of photons hitting my hand, creating radiation, heat, radiation in the form of heat. Heat would also be transferring generally for a different method. What else? Neutrinos would be passing through my hand right now. Millions of them, I think. Body heat, my own body heat produces. Imagine I'm floating around in space. Even then, there's still stuff in my hand. Like my body heat would be expelling pretty fast, to be fair. Actually, no, it wouldn't, because I'd be in a vacuum and there'd be no conduction to happen. But I'd still be emitting radiation. Heat in the form of radiation. And ice crystals would possibly start forming on the hands as the moisture rushes out of the pores of my skin. My hand would probably start to expand as the blood vessels start boiling and stuff. God, this is turning in dark. But essentially, nothing is a complex topic. This has turned into a lovely conversation. But let's say we find something that is absolute nothingness, a complete empty cube of space that has no gravity in it. Like, we've repelled everything. We have millions of years of technological advancement behind us, and we create a cube of space that has literally nothing in it. That itself would be a property, and therefore this nothingness couldn't exist. Because it itself would not be nothing. Nothing is something. The lack of properties is a property in itself, I guess is the easy way to say it. And therefore the property, and therefore nothing having a property, makes it not nothing anymore. I hope you understand what I'm saying. The list goes on. There's a lot of things in the universe, and I think nothing is kind of impossible. So the nothing referred to in these documentaries is not actually nothing. It's just what we use to describe quantum vacuum in this specific case. I mean, if I was to say there's nothing in my hand, I'd be correct. Because in colloquial meanings, or general meanings, I suppose, I'm not expecting the person I'm talking to be thinking about neutrinos at the time, am I? I'm just thinking of physical, tangible objects, and they're not in my hand, so I'm correct. However, if I'm talking to a physicist around topics like quantum mechanics or physics, then I wouldn't be correct. But I probably wouldn't be talking about my hand. I'd be talking about other things, and therefore nothing means something else, which generally speaking is quantum vacuum. Saying that nothing turned into something is just a way to make it simple for people who don't give a shit about what nothing is. So they say nothing into something as an analogy, essentially, because nothing as a concept in the mind is a hell of a lot easier to explain than quantum vacuum. Some people just don't care about theoretical physics, quantum mechanics, and, you know, they all come under one thing for some people, which is rocket science. And they don't mean literal rocket science, they just mean complicated stuff I don't care about. Or at least in the past it was. Then people like Matt started using it the way they were, instead of treating it like an analogy. It's like Matt doesn't understand an analogy unless it comes to his God and a contradiction. Then he really, really has a good grasp on what an analogy is. And just to make it clear with the Big Bang the Big Bang theory describes the expansion of space. Now, the beginning of the Big Bang, or the theory of the Big Bang, tries to go as far back as possible. So, that doesn't necessarily mean that we shrink it down until it reaches a point and therefore that's the start of the universe. That's just as far back as we can go. At a certain point, visually speaking, we can only go back at 13.4 billion years ago. Much further than that. Basically, light formed at a certain point in time after, but we can go further back mathematically. I can't even remember when light started to appear. I think it's like 300 or 400,000, or it's 300 or 400 million. I'm just getting the number mixed up. But yeah, so when it comes to light, we only go so far because photons hadn't formed. So we can't look back further than this anymore. And then we use mathematics to try and go further back, and we can go to such a point. But again, mathematics only goes so far, and we hit a roadblock. That doesn't mean that that's the start of the universe. That's just as far back as we can go. We literally have no knowledge of what happens before this, because we can't. The Big Bang Theory literally only explains the expansion. It's not the cause, nothing along those lines. We are working on it, and it is possible that the Big Bang Theory, and it is possible that the Big Bang could have been caused by virtual particles, quantum fluctuations. These things seem to have no cause in current physics. Maybe one day we will know more, but current science has designated them as uncaused. They seem to pop into existence and disappear without cause and without reason. Their effects are real, and their effects remain. So we have an uncaused effect, essentially, but that's about as far as I know. I don't really want to go any further without having to delve deep into this topic that I probably couldn't understand beyond what I've already said. But basically, a way to think about this is think of a sword. I don't have a sword. But we're going to think of a sword. Imagine a sword. And how was it created? The sword itself was probably created by being smelted into a forge and then laid out into a, what they called, mold. And then you pull out the sword when it's cold and not burning hot. So, in that situation, the sword started in the forge. The sword began in the forge. But the materials that made the sword didn't. So, the forge was the starting point of the sword. But everything that's in the sword, the materials, the metals, anything else you've added onto it, they came from somewhere else before the forge, but we can't figure that out. I mean, we know in real life, but in this case with the Big Bang, we just don't know what happened before. We don't even know if a before even makes sense with the Big Bang in question, but you can think of it like a sword and a forge. I was just using it as a quick analogy. But just for Matt, the sword is not an actual universe. I know you struggle with analogies.
So even if the Big Bang is true, atheism is still false.
No, it isn't. And if that's the case, why talk about it? Because if the Big Bang happened, in your mind, God, and if it didn't happen, in your mind, God. So it doesn't prove God. It doesn't disprove atheism. It has absolutely no effect on it, so why bring it up? I don't care if magical elf-fairies created the universe. They're not gods, they're just magical elf-fairies. It doesn't change the fact that whether the universe was created or not. And even if the Big Bang wasn't a start of the universe, and maybe it was like a futuristic timeline where, as I said before, future overlaps and a future event causes the Big Bang, or we could have the big bounce where the universe expands and then contracts. I don't think that's likely to happen, but it's an idea where it contracts again and then bounces again, and it's an infinite cycle. And even in that situation, it doesn't disprove God. God could still exist if we prove any of these or none of these. So I'm not going to say the Big Bang happened, therefore no God. I don't see the point. It doesn't make sense. Matt seems to forget that the definition of an atheist is this and only this: the non-belief in a God. I mean, there are different ways of wording it, but ultimately, an individual has a concept of a God and they don't believe in it. There are other concepts of gods and they don't believe in any of them. Okay, whatever others have considered gods, this individual doesn't believe in. He's like, nah, I don't think that's true. That's it, nothing more. You can be an atheist and a science denier. You can believe magical fairy people things created the universe. That's not a god, so that's still an atheist. Again, this is another thing that Matt's been told many, many, many times and doesn't remember.
And the reason we know the Big Bang could not have taken place is because you cannot convert dust to water. Think about it. You would have had H2O convert from dust particles. It doesn't make any sense. 326 million trillion gallons of water exist on Earth alone, and to say that all of that was condensed as energy, they claim, in an infinitely dense hot point is ludicrous and absurd, and it is demonstratively false.
What the fuck are you on about, Matt? Dust into water is impossible, but one more step and it turns to wine. Right? The Big Bang isn't just dust turning into water, it's just the expansion of space. We've said this a few times. I don't really know what else to say about this part. Dust, water, no. Water as dust is ice. Dust can refer to many things, as in just tiny little particles that are annoying and get in your eye and you have to scrub out your eyes or whatever, I don't know. I'm going to turn this into a long rant as well. But water. All the water on Earth cannot be... I'm going to keep looking at my notes because I'm running out of time. So all the water on Earth cannot be condensed down into a single point, he said, wasn't it? So if we think about this, I know it sounds almost as crazy as a god did it all. Supernatural being spoke a magical incantation, but no, water can't be crushed. So if you've got water on Earth, yeah, and we freeze it, it expands. Strange, right? However, you can get ice that shrinks, but it's not done by freezing, it's done by compression. On, let's say, Europa, I think, you've got the ice sheet on top. That would be the frozen ice. It's expanded. It's probably due to lack of pressure rather than just coldness. But nonetheless, there's another version of ice on top. You've likely got an ocean circling the main part of the moon of Jupiter. And then you've probably got another layer of ice. That's ice 7, which is caused by pressure. Massive pressure is crushing the water down into a solid because of pressure only, and that's making all the molecules of the water literally sit in organized structures, and therefore it doesn't move anymore. It's a solid. Now, it's not just water that does this. Many things do this, and if you go to some extents, you get black holes. If you crush that ice 7 water, or the water that turned into ice 7, crush it even further, eventually you'll get to a point of a Schwarzschild radius, where you still have the same amount of mass, but the radius of the actual physical object is now so small that a black hole has formed around it. You get the event horizon that is expanded beyond the mass of the object itself, the surface of the object. Now, when black holes form, we don't really know what happens inside of them because, light can't even escape it, nothing can escape it. So as I said, we can't really look into black holes, so we've struggled to look at this on any other form. But just before we get there, something that may help us understand. We know that obviously water is made up of a compound of elements H2O. So we've got two different things, 3 objects, but 2 of them are different. They come in different shapes and sizes. You've got hydrogen and oxygen. So you've got like the center thing. I'm just going to use the image just to make it easier. You've got the central structure. You've got the spinny objects. This is not drawn to scale. Just like with the Earth and the Moon in most pictures, it's not drawn to scale. To draw it to scale, you wouldn't be able to fit it on your computer screen without looking at Earth as a single dot. Anyway, the same thing happens with the atom. These are scaled up with the orbits so close that it just doesn't match the scale. These things are tiny, even tiny when you can see the whole structure, it's tiny. Most of an atom is 99.9 recurring % empty space. It's just empty between it. So if you can crush objects close together, and atoms usually repel each other, but if you get them close enough to touch each other, they could intersect. And they get so close that there's no space between them. And eventually they start colliding, I guess, or breaking apart. They start ripping each other apart. Now, when a star goes supernova, it can turn into a black hole, which we've discussed, but it can also turn into a neutron star. We get things like quasars and magnetars and other crazy stars. These stars are made up of neutron matter, which is basically... I hope I get this right. I'm going without my notes now, just so I can get through it all. These are where atoms have absolutely annihilated each other. They've been destroyed, and the star is made up of smaller things than atoms, which are smaller fundamental building parts, which means they can be squeezed again, even further, essentially. And that's basically as close as we can get to what's inside a black hole. A black hole is much more extreme. So yeah, eventually these things are getting crushed down into a single point in space. Though, ironically, a black hole does not always go to a single point because of the rotational angular momentum. It creates more of a ring singularity. But I'm probably going too far than I actually need to. But I feel like it's important because I'll probably talk about that again in a minute. But the reason why I brought it up, because black holes are pretty much the only other place that I can think of where singularities exist at all. The Big Bang is said to have come from a single point singularity, but as Matt was going on about a singularity that's a single point with all the matter of the universe in it. We've already spoke about black holes with a single point. If more matter falls in, the event horizon of the black hole expands, but that single point does not. The gravitational effect expands because there's more matter there, and that affects gravity, but it's just a single point. It's not going to expand. So we can still understand how something could get bigger or more massive with a black hole, but for some reason Matt has decided to ignore all this stuff, but still wants to talk about it as if he understands it all, even though he's been explained that this is not how it works. Again, I just thought I'd throw that out there. I just like rambling on, and this video is mostly a rambling video because I want to. But anyway, why should I ramble on about this and go through all of this effort? And the fun thing is, maybe I've got something slightly wrong. Maybe I've got something majorly wrong. The difference with me and Matt, you can't really go ahead and challenge, God did it. There's nothing to challenge. It's just a magical, spontaneous claim. There's no explanation. It's just God did it. That's what happened. It's not how it happened. We couldn't possibly understand that. So you can't really check it. But everything that I've said, if I'm wrong, go ahead and tell me so I can not get it wrong again in the future. You can look up what I say. You can't really look up what Matt says, apart from in a singular book in which he quotes sometimes. And many people still disagree with him on what that interpretation means. And many like me think that it's just a book. I don't believe in Sauron because of Lord of the Rings. Feel free to challenge what I've said. Feel free to check it out and correct me where I've said something wrong. I probably have, because I haven't been strictly keeping to my research here. I've just been going from memory because I like this topic a lot, so usually I can talk about it, but occasionally I'll say something that I wasn't thinking on accident. I just find it strange when you deny it all. Like Matt, let's say, for example, he's going to probably deny most of what I say here. Oh, it's mysticism. You should believe my magic, not their magic. Do as you wish, to be honest.
And once an atheist begins to understand that God is their creator.
Whoa, hold on, Matt. We haven't even come close to that. In fact, Matt hasn't actually said anything in this regard. What has he said? I'm just going to go through what he said here. I thought we were still building up to something. I mean, so far Matt's tackled scientific topics, which is great, but he denied them because he doesn't understand them. What was it? The only thing he said was that the Big Bang doesn't work because dust can't turn into water. And that the Big Bang doesn't matter, as he said, whether true or not, atheism cannot be true. That's it. Dust can't turn into water, and the Big Bang is irrelevant to the discussion. That's all Matt has said so far. Take me. That's apparently how you convert an atheist. Seriously? I've heard better arguments from atheists. I think this is the point he thinks is going to convert them. Once an atheist accepts God as their creator, if atheists do that, then they're not atheists anymore. Well done. You've just got to listen to him and blindly follow. I mean, I was expecting something. This is the one and only Matt Powell here in front of me saying that he'll convert an atheist. And I'm here and he said, dust doesn't go into water. No, sorry, dust doesn't turn into water. Don't want to straw man his statement. Don't think I can. I was expecting more. I hope there's better in the next video, which is Matt directly claiming he's going to prove God. 10. I'm going to do 10. 10 proofs of God in the next video. I hope there's actually one, to be honest. In this, I was expecting something. He's trying to convert me to theism, and he hasn't done anything. He's just torn down one of the 4 options he presented in his false dichotomy. I know, because he thinks there's 2, just in case that gets used. That
God made them, and that God loves them because he gave them the gift of life, the gift of human existence.
Wait. We went from God as the creator of the universe to now God gives us gifts of life? The one who gave me life is God. Like, if we discovered a cause of the universe, let's say, and it's beyond space and time and shit, I don't know, and we discovered it, then that's God, right? It's the cause of the universe. Therefore, it is the creator God. Even if it doesn't have a consciousness, you can still believe that that's not God and then create a new one above it. But ultimately, the first cause argument suggests that whatever we find there is God. In this case, it's whatever we find that gave me life is God. That's my parents. I don't want to give them a complex, okay? I think that I greatly appreciate my parents, but they're not God. As I am not God as a parent. I mean, Matt's denied a lot of things, but now the birds and the bees? These are just more claims. There's nothing with evidence.
It's very important to explain then that Jesus is the truth and that he has shown himself to be authentic. If somebody could die and then come back from the dead, that means that that individual
is a zombie. Or it could be Lazarus syndrome, which I know is a term that came from the Bible, because ironically, waking from the dead was not actually uncommon in the Bible. So whatever you want to say about Jesus, because he rose from the dead, he must have been imbued with power or whatever he said. I don't know. We'll continue in a minute. But applies to, what, all the saints of Jerusalem, was it? All the holy people of Jerusalem rose from the graves after Jesus had died. There you go. That's a hell of a lot of people who's just rose from the dead. They're all prophets too now. They're all just equivalent to Jesus. They rose from the dead. But I think there was, 5 to 10 other instances of people's sons dying, someone else praying for God to save them, and then they raise. Jesus wasn't an exception here. And even in real life, thinking about it, Lazarus syndrome is named after a real thing that happens, spontaneous revival of the dead. And this only happens to cardiac death. No one has ever arose from brain death. Ever. I was surprised by that too, because even I had thought that people had died and come back. And that was brain death, but it's not. It was misinformation, essentially, that I got caught into. And I spent ages trying to correct myself in a video once, because I was like, I could have sworn it happened at least to somebody, but nope. If the brain switches off, it's game over. Cardiac death has been documented many times to be revived from. Brain death has never. Anyway, I'll let Matt finish now.
That means that that individual has power, authority, and credibility. Jesus did raise from the dead, and many historians will even admit that. And what that tells us is...
Many Christian historians, I'm sure. But no, historians do not believe that, or have come to a consensus that Jesus rose from the dead. That's not the consensus. What was it? There was 3. I'll just look. They agree that Jesus existed, that Jesus was crucified, and that his followers believed that he arose from the dead. They don't believe the event happened. They don't know. I'm going to clarify that too. They don't know if the event happened, but they know that the followers believe that it happened. As, the same is true today. People do believe that that happened. It doesn't mean it's true. But no, the majority of historians have not ruled that Jesus rose from the dead.
That the New Testament is authentic. Think about it. The New Testament is 27 different books that are all compiled together in one book. And the Gospels contain eyewitness accounts of Jesus's life, death, and resurrection.
This here is the compilation of Tolkien's work, The Lord of the Rings, compiled into one singular book. In these books, there were many eyewitness testimonies of Sauron. Fictional stories are in the Bible. Maybe some are true, but some may be exaggerated, but some are definitely fictional. And if Matt doesn't agree that some of these are fictional, then I want to take a look at 2 Samuel 12, where David and Bathsheba had like an affair thing, which I don't necessarily think is all entirely Bathsheba's fault, but anyway. Bathsheba was married to Uriah, who was on a battlefield. David calls him back. David tries to get Uriah drunk, so he sleeps with the wife because the wife is now pregnant, and he doesn't want to get found out. So he was trying to pin the blame on Uriah and get Uriah to raise his son, but no. So David is doing bad things, most certainly. Bathsheba may have been a victim here too, I don't know. But she may have also have been being devious too. Uriah is definitely a victim in this scenario, for both what we've already explained, and that David couldn't successfully get Uriah to have sex with his wife, so because he felt bad that his men were on the battlefield and he's been called home for no reason. He didn't want the reward without committing, essentially. So David sends Uriah back to the battlefield with a letter that sends him to the front lines for the general, essentially. Basically, David has Uriah indirectly murdered, puts in these situations where he's going to die. And Uriah dies. Then David tries to marry Bathsheba so that, no one finds out that the babe is his that was born out of wedlock, essentially. But God obviously sees everything. He knows everything, and you can't hide stuff from God. So God comes down and punishes David by not doing anything to David directly. David essentially gets away scot-free. I mean, obviously, it's still bad. It's happening to his family, sure, but no direct punishment to David. Bathsheba gets a punishment, and David has a son, obviously. He's just born, a newborn baby, an innocent newborn baby that God gives a sickness to as a punishment to David. The idea of no sins of the father or whatever it is, inherits no sins of the father. But still, God punishes the son because of the father's actions, which is against Christianity. God doesn't have to abide by his own rules, I'm sure. And the baby is sick for 7 days. He suffers for 7 days and then dies. God has directly killed an innocent baby for something his father did. I don't care how you put it. That's either fictional or God is evil. That's a dichotomy. Okay? And I don't think it's false. If you can present me with a third option, sure, try. Maybe exaggerated, but then therefore fictional. Or God is evil. And I'm not going to worship an evil God, dude, even if it's real. That God could still be true. I'm not going to say that it isn't. God could be evil. I think it's actually more likely that God is evil than good. I think it's more likely he doesn't exist. But if I had to put a good God next to an evil God and look at the world we live in, I'd say an evil God's more likely. Even with the books about God, they seem to point to an evil God.
Scholars in the first century like Josephus, Tacitus, Pliny the Younger, and so on and so forth were writing about Jesus.
Now, Matt talks a lot about the stories in the Bible. I thought I'd save you from that, because it's irrelevant. We don't need to look at Lord of the Rings to prove Sauron, so we don't need to look at the Bible to prove God. I mean, it's the claim, so it's good to look at it to see the claim of God, but, we don't need to hear it preached. But anyway, I'm fine with Jesus existing, just none of the magic stuff. Like, when it comes to history, basically, we see all the evidence around, and we think of the most logical answer that explains it. Anything supernatural is less likely to happen than anything natural. If Jesus walked on water, then it's more logical to think that he's done a magic trick and fooled people into thinking that he's walked on water. That's a more logical answer. Like he's put chairs under the water, just under the surface so people can't see, and dyed the water so you can't see through it. All of these things are more likely than he just steps on water and glides across. So that's going to be a more likely answer. Historians don't really deal with the supernatural. So no, historians do not think that Jesus was magical, and I have no reason to believe that either. But I don't deny that Jesus may have existed. I think it's also likely that Jesus was a collection of multiple characters that presented a good story, so they labelled it that's a Jesus, rather than it being an individual. I think there is a main story of Jesus, but occasionally someone did something they wrote into Jesus's life. I don't know if that's true. That's just my opinion. Maybe Jesus and all the stories on him were just one person put into the Bible, and they kept it strictly that. Maybe. But still, it's fictional when it comes to the magical stuff. And it turns out we're skipping a lot, because he was preaching a hell of a lot.
Folks, God really did create this world. We aren't an accident. We're not a cosmic burp of non-existent material that just poofed everything into existence.
Why not? I mean, even a cosmic burp, which is now a fifth option instead of the four, is a false dichotomy. This is getting complicated. The fifth option of a cosmic burp is more likely than God did it. Supernatural being that spoke an incantation that created the earth to spontaneously exist. Or cosmic burp. It's more likely. We have less assumptions made. The cosmos burped and the universe appeared. Cosmos can burp. Universe could appear from it. Or supernatural beings exist. Supernatural being has the power to create the universe. And the universe can be created. There you go. At least that. Magical spells are apparent as well, a requirement. What else would it be? Yeah, I think that's it. That'll do. At least 4 things. Beings have the power, incantations, and the potential for the universe to exist from it. So yeah, cosmic birth more likely than cosmic being.
And Jesus really did exist. He was a real character of the past that shook up the entire world so much that the Roman Empire reset the calendars, because it completely shocked the world when people had seen him risen again after having been crucified on an old rugged cross.
Buddha actually existed as well, based on the same logic, and so did Muhammad, actually. But these people existing are no more proof that all Buddhism, all Islam, and all Christianity are true, because that's impossible too. 2 of them at least contradict each other. Buddhism's non-theistic, so I don't know. They got some supernatural entities, just like Christianity's angels and stuff, for example, but no God, as far as I know. And Islam and Christianity, although both the Abrahamic gods, so therefore technically the same God, they've made different claims about that God that make it different, so they can't be the same. Certainly not on Matt's fundamental level.
The beauty of Christianity is that God gives us a choice to accept him or reject him. He doesn't force himself upon us. He doesn't force us into his presence in heaven against our will.
Yeah, your God doesn't actually seem to do much, does he?
He gives us the opportunity to accept or neglect salvation. He gives us choices in life. And that's another reason why we know that God exists. Because if Darwinism is true, we are nothing but biological machines that are coated with material that does not give us the ability to have free will. We are robots, according to Darwinism.
Free will might be an illusion, but it surprises me that creationists or religious people in general who believe in a all-knowledgeable God think that free will is not an illusion for them. They're like, you can't be an atheist. Free will was given to us by God. An all-knowledgeable God that has the ability to know everything that I'm going to do in the next 10 minutes, let's say. If he can't do that, he's not all-knowledgeable. If he can do that, I don't have free will. The only answer people give to this that isn't an answer but seems to hand-wave it away is the idea of multiverses, because they think that the universe splits off into 2 different ones where let's say I'm going to raise my right or left hand, I get to pick. And in this universe, I raise my right hand, and in my other universe, I raise the left hand. Okay, so both happen, therefore God knew the answer. But that's cheating. God could not have not known the answer in that situation because I do every possible action. So God couldn't get it wrong. It's not that he's all-knowing, it's that he just physically couldn't get it wrong. It's like rolling a dice and getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, rather than getting just one of the options. However, I could say that in this universe, because that's not how multiple universes work anyway. It's there's an infinite universes and all options happen. So God could pick. Not that multiverses I agree with either, but I'm just saying that's what the thought goes. So if I say to God, in my universe with me as an individual, not any other version of me as an individual right here, right now, am I going to do my left or right hand? Does God know which one I'm going to do, even if I haven't decided yet? The answer should be yes if God is omniscient. If he does not know the answer to the question, he's not omniscient. If he does know, then I don't have free will. So I don't understand why theists think that they have free will and we don't. We don't know if we have free will, and Matt presented it like it's very clear that we don't. But we just don't know. We have started with ideas that lead to the concept that free will might be an illusion, and that we just feel like we're in control. And as much as I don't like that, I can't deny the potential in the truth in that. Maybe it's true, we don't know. But Matt wants a God to be omniscient and not have the logical consequences of that. Unfortunately, God nor reality has to bend to my will nor Matt's. We don't get to create these things as concepts in our minds and just put them into reality. We have to figure it out instead. It's a process. Now, I also need to address the loaded language issue before we move on, coded was clearly used to imply like someone that's coding. But ultimately, DNA is made up of like proteins, for example, and they're designated with letters. And it looks like coding, so we analogize it as code, like programming. It's an analogy. Again, not real. It's not literal. It's just an analogy. I could just as well say algebra. Okay? It would be just as right to say that because coding is ones and zeros. Well, I suppose it's not. It is still a language. You get my point, though. But just because I look at the surface of the Earth and go, right, all of these different types of rock are going to be R1 and R2, R3, R4, R for rock. And we got this water. We've got salt water and non-salt water. We're going to change the levels as 1 to 10. And that's how we're going to designate all the water molecules on the surface of the Earth. And if we did that and mapped the entire Earth with all these numbers and designations, that doesn't suddenly mean that the Earth has been programmed. Okay, it just means I've labelled all these things. Same with DNA. We've just labelled the things that connect it all together. God is not a computer programmer called Kevin. Who knows, maybe he actually is. I say that with certainty, and I could be wrong. We could think about it like the universe has been coded as well. Look at the periodic table of elements. Look at all these letters that have suddenly appeared. This coded language that's written in English.
But according to the Bible and according to common sense, according to reality today, we have free will. You can freely choose to do certain things or to not do certain things. And if you have free will, it means that you were designed by somebody that gave you the ability to make choices. We aren't just mindless robots that came about by natural selection and mutations. We were designed with a purpose.
Well, that design hasn't panned out well so far, has it? Not according to the claim of a tri-omni God. You know, just like how this video that we were watching now had the plan or the purpose to convert an atheist to Christianity, but instead I just found it absurdly deceitful. It seems like the true intent of the video was actually for people who are already following Christianity, those who already believed. I know that might seem strange, but he only attacked the opposition. He didn't defend himself. He didn't try to prove his point. He was just trying to show the absurdity of the opposition, creating a stronger divide between himself and his flock and, you know, science and general reasoning skills and logic and thinking. And that divide will mean that he'll have more cohesiveness with his flock, and they will trust him more than they'll trust outsiders, which is just kind of gross in my opinion. Which was just kind of extremely gross in my opinion. It was just full of straw man arguments of the atheist positions. Not that there are multiple positions of the atheists, it's just there is no God. That's it. Or I don't believe it. You know, someone says, there's a God. I don't believe you. I think that's it. But he just tries to poke flaws at science, which ironically not all atheists are, like, or at least believers in. Like, there's an atheist flat earther, I'm pretty sure, on YouTube, called Atheist Flat Earther, maybe. I don't know. But it seems like the intention of the video was to point out flaws in his strawman version of atheism, just to create that divide between his flock and, you know, just the general public and scientists, to make sure that his flock are isolated enough, at least logically and thinking wise, from the rest of the world. And if there is any doubt, they'll go to him to correct that doubt, and he gets to rein them back in like a shepherd moon with the rings. He's got control of his flock. That's pretty much it. But there is nothing in that to convert an actual atheist. There wasn't even an argument for God in it. And I mean, he didn't even do it with a smile. Anyway, that was fun. Have a good day, and we're going to take a look at another video where Matt says he's got 10 proofs of God. So I do wonder if he's actually got proof of God, or if he's just going to tackle atheist positions again, his perceived atheist positions. Anyway, I hope you have a good day. Bye.